This video is going to show you a relatively quick way to render out gold and metal materials in Photoshop using the modes. So if this is something that you're interested in, keep watching. As usual, there are lots of different ways to do things. Find and do what works best for you, and you should always study from actual art books and lessons, not just do what random YouTube artists say if you want to get better at your own art. Okay, now let's get started. I'm going to use this whip of Harley from Chrono Cross that I've been working on for my example for this. Basically, you always want to start dark with this method. The color that I'm going to be using for this method is the gold that is on her hood right here. I already have painted on a different layer. If you would like to use this exact color, the hex code is right here. Go ahead and type those into your color wheel and it will give you this exact color. If you want to, you can add it to your swatches so you can use it for your gold later. All you have to do is click on Add to Swatches, and then it will be added to your group of swatches that you can pull up and paint with later. Alright, what you want to do after you have the base color painted on for this is create a new layer. I'm going to drag this out of the group so you can see it better. I'm going to just close the group. We want to create this new layer, and you want to change your layer mode to linear dodge add. Now, if you're doing this in something like Clip Studio, they have their layer modes weird. I think linear dodge and clip is something called add glow. I don't know. I didn't double check before making this since I was making it for Photoshop. Anyway, once you have this loaded, double click on it with your left mouse button to bring up your layers effects menu. And you're going to click the transparency shapes layer off, and then you're going to hit OK. The reason that we're going to do this is because if the transparency shapes layer is off with color dodge and linear dodge, then it will not scatter out. Gold and metal are reflective, so they don't scatter out light like other material does. Once it's set up, go ahead and click down here and go to white. Grab your brush that you're going to be working with. So for the sake of other people being able to follow along with this better, I'm just going to use a simple airbrush, similar to the default and similar to the one that comes in Clip. With this, you want to make sure that you have pen pressure on, so you have opacity by pressure on your brush, and you want to very, very gently go over where the light would be. The more that you go over this, the brighter the burnout is going to be. Keep that in mind. Also keep in mind, since metal is reflecting the light, the points that are facing you are where the highlights would be. If you wanted this to be more saturated, you could change your mode to color dodge, and this will give you a much more saturated burnout. You can also adjust your fill if you want this to be duller. If you want to make this more detailed, create a new mode and change this new mode to linear burn. Turn the fill to the linear burn down to something like 20 and change your color to black. Go ahead and with the same method, use your airbrush to draw next to the brightest points. This is going to give your metal darker parts. Normally these parts are the reflections of the environment around you, so keep that in mind. If you want them to be even darker, all you have to do is adjust the fill again. If you want them to be lighter, then lower the fill. The reason that we are using linear burn instead of multiply for this is, unlike multiply, linear burn is going to give you a darker, more saturated color, and when you're dealing with metals and golds, these are things that have very high contrast, so they have very bright brights and very dark darks. Linear burn just works better than multiply in this case. You can also substitute linear burn for color burn if you would like to have a more colorful version of your darker shadows. That's entirely up to you and what you would prefer. If you're working with something that has hard edges, then you want to make sure that those hard edges are catching light. Create a new layer and set this new layer to color dodge. Left click on it again and turn the transparency shapes layer off. And where the sharp edges would be catching the light, go ahead with a hard round brush and the color set to white. Draw on your highlights. You can use linear dodge for your highlights. You can use pure white for your highlights. Personally, I think color dodge just looks pretty, so I use that one a lot. Lastly, if you wanted this to be metal, you could start with a dark bluish gray, or depending on your environment, tint it whatever color your environment is in. Or you can just take this gold and desaturate it. It's up to you. Anyway, that's about it. You can use these modes and dark gold base colors to render out golds and metals pretty quickly and pretty easily. If you would like to have more detail and more realistic looking gold and metal, make sure you are adding slight bits of color from your reflected environment into your metals and your golds. Make sure that you are adding reflections into your metals and golds. Make sure that you are adding textures like bumps and scratches, rust, things like that. Adding these will help your gold look much more realistic. If you have a textured brush, if you have a speckled brush, you can use either of these with the same modes and the same method to add detail and further push the realism of your gold. Anyway, that's it for this one. Later.